Welcome to the Practical Dreamers podcast, where your dreams and finances collide. I'm Charm,
And I'm Dira.
and we're your guides on this journey to financial freedom. And today's topic is very interesting. It's one that I think I get asked a lot, and it's about Dira.
The credit score. Okay. So I know people always have questions about their credit, how they can repair it, what goes into credit. So we're here to help everyone with that information, and hopefully you leave here enlightened. So let's start with what the credit score is. So basically, it's a three-digit number. It can go anywhere as low as 300 and as high as 850. Creditors basically use this information to figure out if you are worthy of giving items to, basically, like cars, houses, boats, the whole gamut. And if you're a more risky lender, that means you're falling more towards that 300 versus if you're more trustworthy of a lender, or you're not the lender, you're the person receiving it. But anyway, you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Then you'd be more at like the 850. Not saying that this has anything to do with anybody's personal character. But that's just how banks understand where you fall in that range. So some factors on how your credit score is actually calculated is your repayment history. So how consistently you're paying your bills, as well as the types of loans you have. So the credit mix is what they call that. The length of credit history, how long you've had accounts open, as well as debt utilization and new account openings. These all contribute.
Thanks, Dira. That was
You're
great.
welcome. Anytime.
Awesome. So, if I can possibly put this in one sentence, what I'm gathering is that the higher the score, the more likely you are to get approved for loans and possibly get lower interest rates.
Exactly. You
Very
gathered it
nice.
correctly.
Awesome. Only because of your awesome teaching.
I try.
All right. Well, when it comes to credit scores, though, I will say that I am on the fence. Honestly, I think when it comes to credit score, I think of the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, as far as the good, one thing that I can say that is good when it comes to credit scores, as Dira shared with us earlier, is that all of those things that you want to obtain in life, like a car, a home, you know, a high credit score or a credit score period will help you get there. Um, However, I definitely think there are some other things that could factor in. But before we jump into those, dear, any other goods that you can think of with the credit score?
So glad you asked. It just basically gives you buying power, is what you're saying. I can get that boat if my credit's up.
Absolutely. Why does everyone want to get a boat? But anywho,
I don't know. They just seem fun. I used to be a captain.
I rode on a boat with you before. You were the worst driver ever.
Listen, still a captain.
If you want to get soaking wet riding in a boat when you think you're going to be dry, ride with Dira.
Yep. You'll have lots of fun.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, then let's jump into the bad. So, when I think of bad, as it relates to credit score, it's pretty much that you have to be in debt in order to maintain or get a great credit score in itself,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. It feels so backwards. It's like a lot of times we're told to save and to think smartly with your money, but in this situation, in order to have credit, you're right, you have to go into debt in order to get it. So yeah, it's definitely the bad part of it.
Absolutely. And now the ugly. The ugly for me is more so the fact that you get penalized for paying off something early. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say, for instance, you got your car and you actually now have the money to pay it off, and you got a 3-year loan on it, let's say, but you're paying it off in a year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as exciting as that might sound, because now you no longer have to pay that $500,000, whatever it is, car payment, you now are going to get dinged on your credit score for paying it off early.
I
So
know. It's silly.
it is. It is. And And then ultimately, I would just say, like, even paying off anything else would ding your credit score too.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like when I paid my car off, I had that same situation. My credit decided to stumble down. I mean, it recovered, but it's annoying. It's like you do all this stuff to get your credit to be at a certain point, and then you think you're doing great, like, oh yeah, no more car payment. Exhausting.
Absolutely is. Absolutely is. Well, that's my tip, or I should say, take on the good, the bad, the ugly when it comes to credit scores. So
That
be
was a
wary of
great
those things.
presentation of it.
Thank you. Thank you. I thought so. Just thought it out on the
Mhm.
fly, by the way.
I
Uh,
love it.
Now, as we were sharing earlier, when it comes to paying off debt early, I definitely think there's some benefits though to that too. One benefit that I would share is that you will save on the interest rate. So, and the example that I was given, I probably wasn't as elaborate as I should have been, but the example I was given as far as paying off your car early, um, and then of course you're not no longer paying that monthly payment, but essentially you are now not paying that interest rate and you're paying less in interest, I should say, up front versus if you
Mhm.
waited the entire 3-year car loan, you would have paid more in interest than what you're paying now by paying it early. So those are benefits I would say for paying off debt early. So I don't want to discourage anyone to keep your credit score up to pay off things early because sometimes there's more of a financial benefit in the long run.
So, in addition to the interest savings, another thing I want to add is that you have this extra cash that you've now freed up. When you pay something off in full, like say a car, now that whole car payment, whatever it was, can go to other things like maybe another bill that you need to pay off, or maybe it could go to your fund money, or possibly it can even go into investments and things for your future. So that's what's cool about paying things off early.
Very
Any other
true.
thoughts, Charm?
Yes, I would say the emotional relief, being able to pay something off and no longer having that hovering over your head or having the bank call you or even seeing the notice that your something is due because as we all know sometimes seeing a bill can be very nerve-wracking. It can definitely build up some anxiety. So actually I would definitely say the emotional relief behind paying things off early is a definitely a pro.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's a lot having people call you constantly and harass you for the bills that you already know you have. It's not fun. Um
Absolutely.
and just to be well-rounded here, we are going to talk about some of the cons of paying off debt early, which would be short-term cash reduction because you're putting a lot of that capital over towards your bills, basically. So you're not going to have that money to say go out to a fancy dinner or to go to the movies, maybe, or whatever you want to do. But just think about how you'll have that later on in life. It might not be as far away as you think. And also missed investment opportunities. So, like I was saying, when you free up that money after you pay things off, the downside is during the time that you're paying things off, you're not necessarily able to invest like you would like to. But, there's always a good and bad side of everything.
Great. Thanks, Dara, for adding that. And now it's important for us to share some tips for our listeners that are possibly interested in building their credit or abandoning their credit, because I'm okay with that too. But ultimately, these tips will definitely be beneficial more for individuals that are looking to rebuild their credit.
So, one of the things that I think really helps a lot of people is a secured credit card. So, this is basically a card that you put a deposit onto. You're actually able to build your credit from this card. Now, what's unique about this one is that you do have to put down that security deposit because maybe you're falling towards more of that untrustworthy credit person. But after you use this credit card for X amount of time, you start to build your credit. And it's a great way to get in the game when you're not able to right off the bat.
That's an interesting one. I actually was not familiar with that. So thanks for sharing that, Dira.
Yeah, of
All right.
course.
Well, one of my tips would be to check your credit score. Many of you may not even know what your score is. So I encourage you to make sure that you're looking at that. There are some free websites out there. I know many people may know Credit Karma is one where you can pull your credit score. And I think it's very important to do that because just to add on to that, you want to make sure that there's no errors. So that will be the
Hmm.
second tip, that once you pull your credit score, you make sure there's no errors on there. Everything that's linked to your account is actually you, and no one else. We know identity theft is real out here. So those would
Oh
be
yeah, definitely.
key tips
I,
there.
I do want to add one thing about credit reports. You can actually, some credit card companies will actually give you your credit report for free. So it's included in you having the credit card itself. So that's something else to look out for too.
Great point. Great point. All right. Another one, dear.
So another way you can build your credit is through using apps like Rental Karma. So by this, I mean simply paying your rent and your utilities generally doesn't end up on your credit report, which really stinks because it's like maybe you're really good at paying these things, but you don't
I
have,
hope so.
well, yeah, I mean, I hope so too. Because if you're not, don't do this because it's not going to help your situation. But, but reaching out to a company like Rental Karma, there's other ones as well. I can't really think of them. They're not coming to mind right now, but they can actually help get these types of bills, such as rental payments, onto your credit report. And that will help a world for some people. Yeah. And then another one would be limiting new inquiries. So whenever you open a new line of credit, it hits your credit report. And there's hard inquiries and then there's softer ones. But you just want to make sure that you're not hitting it often, meaning stop opening up a whole bunch of lines of credit back to back to back. That's what that means.
Absolutely.
Anything
Well,
else, Charm?
yes. So funny enough, you just kind of crossed into some of the two tips that I have, which is great because I want to reiterate them because they are important. One, utilization. To Deera's
Hmm.
point, making sure that you're not opening up multiple credit cards as well as overusing. Making sure that you're keeping your balances low is key to credit card success. In addition to that, you mentioned earlier about making sure that you're paying your rents and your utilities on time if you decide to use that as a choice or a route in building your credit score. Well, making timely payments is key to building your score. So make
Hmm.
sure you're not running late, not running behind on these on your bills, on your credit card bills, but in particularly, as that will definitely impact your score.
Oh, 100%. And lastly, be patient. Credit does is not something that happens overnight. You're not going to build it in a week, okay? Contrary to what some people say, it's a process, okay? It takes time. Just be patient, let it happen, trust the process, trust yourself, and you'll get it done.
I totally agree. Totally agree.
Yeah.
And I know I always come back to this, but the societal pressure
That
of
pressure.
that pressure of the credit score, I think is ideally there. And I think it's just a number period because you think about when we were younger, we had the SAT score. You have to have this score in order to have a
Hmm.
thriving life. And now you graduate, you possibly go to school or you don't go to school, whatever the case may be. But now when you enter your adulthood, it's like, oh, you got to have a credit score. Got to get this score to have a
Hmm.
thriving life. It's like, who came up with these numbers?
I don't know. Life is numbers. It's like you're always being graded by something, and there's some sort of pressure to keep up with. So it doesn't surprise me.
That's absolutely true. Absolutely true. Well, everyone, that's it for another episode. We do hope that you found this information helpful and useful. We are both curious to know what tips and tricks that you've used in the past that may have improved your credit score that we may not have mentioned. Want to make sure you share in the comments. And if you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe. And hopefully we'll hear from all of you very soon.